everyone, Anita here and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be painting with ink. I've actually felt like painting with ink ever since Inktober. It was surprisingly fun. Like, I've dreaded Inktober because I've never painted with ink before. But after I'm actually missing it, it's a completely different way of painting than with watercolor. And it's in some ways really relaxing. So when I got contacted by Bang.com who just asked if I wanted to get some of their products and make a video, using those products. At first I was a bit like, nah, I've done a lot of reviews lately, maybe not. But then I took a closer look at their stock and they had a lot of items that I could use for ink painting that I've never seen before. Now, one of them are the brushes that I'm using in the background right now. They are refillable calligraphy brushes. Goodness. Calligraphy brushes. Refillable, which is amazing because when I was painting during Inktober, the first thing that popped in my head is that it took a long time to get the washes right and just to have the ratios good. And I felt the whole time I was thinking, perhaps I could get some water brushes, like, the normal ones for painting, and fill those with ink, with diluted ink, and maybe that would be easier. You would have a marker, really, when you think about it. You would have a marker that you could use with ink, just diluted one. And because it's actually quite much different than, for example, using a pen or something like that, even if it's a lighter shade of gray. So when I saw, well, of course, water brushes are very expensive, but this comes with a set of 6 brushes, and this was really, really inexpensive. I'm not exactly sure how much it cost anymore, but yeah, it was like less than $1 for one, which I was like, okay, that can go both wrong really quickly, but let's give it a try. And then I've also picked up some fountain pens because that was another thing that got me thinking. I'm not really I wasn't much of a brush user. I wasn't really, comfortable using a brush for lines. Back during Inktober, it actually changed a lot ever since then. But the thing that kind of what got me thinking was perhaps I could use a fountain pens for ink. Now, the problem with that is that I can't really use the same ink I used during Inktober because I've used water-resistant ink, like the one that dries and you can't really move it anymore. Because, of course, that kind of ink, I think I never remember which one it is. If it's the Indian ink, black Indian ink, I think. One of them I know is basically water-resistant and the other one isn't. So, yeah. But so with fountain pens, you can't actually use I keep losing that word. What ink that dries, and you can, for example, paint with watercolor on top of it, and it's not going to reactivate. You can't use that because it makes sense, if you put that inside a fountain pen or anything really, and it's going to dry. It has the binder in it. It's almost like glue. So it's just going to ruin your pen or your brush. So I've actually picked up, you can see it in the corner right now on the screen. I've picked up a bottle of ink because I didn't have any ink that could be used with fountain pens. And so this ink is, you can reactivate it with water. It has a little bit, it's not exactly, for painting. I don't even know if it's light fast or anything, but it worked perfectly fine. And I actually like the fact that you could go back with water. Or in my case, I filled one of those brushes with ink that was a little bit it had different intensity. I've added water, more water to some of them. So it almost it was easier to shade with it. It was so nice. But it also stains a little bit. So it leaves, it leaves a ghost underneath. So it doesn't completely go away. It's just something, I actually really like that. But, if you don't like it, then you're not going to be happy. So that's basically, I've had so much fun. And you can probably hear it because I can't really be I ramble a lot right now. But so what I'm painting right now is a hole in a tree, I guess. It kind of evolved over time. I've decided to paint a Totoro piece because I don't know if you guys know, Totoro is a Japanese animated movie. It's like a classic for children. And just recently, I believe it was 18th of May, it just had its 30th anniversary. I mean, 30 years, it's almost as old as I am right now. It's like the first movie really that I really heard of when I thought about Studio Ghibli. Not the first one I watched, but the first one that Totoro is like this, I would say just just something that you see a lot. It's just like when I think of Studio Ghibli, I think of Totoro, even though, My Neighbor Totoro is not really my favorite Ghibli movie. But the character itself is it's so iconic. And I just really wanted to paint something just to celebrate it, And so I've decided to make this layered piece because I like layered pieces. Why not? Especially when I'm not selling this piece because it's, I don't know about this ink, whether or not it's light fast. I can't really sell it, but, because of, I can always make prints out of it. It's never a wasted time. So I wanted to have a little bit more fun and make this like a fan art kind of piece for Totoro and make it layered. I love my layered pieces. So the initial idea was to have him sleep inside, not really inside a hole in a tree, more of on a tree. But just somewhere along the way, it turned into a hole. It's a very similar concept to the one I've made for the Animal Artist Collective, the very first piece, and there's also a hole in a tree. I don't know, there's something magical about holes in the trees. Once again, I forgot how they are called, even though I remember one time I was like in the Animal Artist Collective piece with the capybaras, I was discussing the exact same problem, and once again that word just, it's just gone. Never mind that. I'm pretty sure some of you will remind me. I can always count on you for that. And by the way, I actually really appreciate it, so don't worry, it's not sarcastic or anything. So here I'm trying different things, like playing a little bit with the brushes, because the brushes themselves, as they were very, very cheap, I didn't have very high expectations. And when they come pre-glued, of course, so they're in shape. And after taking the glue off, I saw in the water that there was plenty of hair just floating around. I was like, oh, okay, well, we will have problems with just hairs in the washes. But actually, that wasn't the case at all. After the initial few just like random hairs that fell off, sometimes, like with any brush, all my brushes shed a little bit. And so do these, but not anything that will cause me to, grind my teeth and be annoyed because, I have to pick up a brush even though I want to paint, or it's in the middle of a perfectly, even wash. And also, I've been, this one here, it might seem like, this is such a little thing to paint, but I've been actually practicing here using the paint brushes for the calligraphy brushes, I guess. Using them for just trying out making thinner lines, because that's something I always felt a little bit intimidated with. I've never really liked brushes, like ink brushes. I've had this pencil brush as well, with a big brush and has a very, very wiggly end that annoyed me to no end. And I couldn't handle it. So, and actually, I don't know, I will have to try it again. I don't know if it's just my skill improved, or as I've said, I've been really feeling better with brushes lately. So I was very surprised, and I actually released this. I tried using these brushes for everything. So here, there's another thing I had in mind while painting this. I wanted to have him, of course, the Totoro, sleeping inside a little hole in a tree. As you can see here, I'm kind of like putting him just to measure where I'm supposed to paint. And that's because I wanted to have I don't know if you guys ever seen it on Pinterest. There's this painting floating around, and it's actually made with resin, as I found out later. But initially I thought it was made with vellum, with very thin like paper. And you just have a layer of, like I'm making here, I'm making trees. And then you cover it with another piece of vellum and paint trees on that. And then you cover it with another piece of vellum and paint on that. And so you get this kind of dimensional piece where the trees are kind of disappearing and on the, you know, deeper layers. You can kind of see them, but you can. It's almost like a misty forest. And I so wanted to try it. The moment I saw this paper, it's also from banggood.com. The moment I saw this calligraphy paper, I thought, okay, I'm trying this together and we'll see where this is going to take me. So while I'm waiting for each layer to dry, because of course I can't really blast it with a heat gun, I have to wait for them to dry. Although, as I found later, it actually doesn't hurt to dab gently with a piece of cloth, like a paper. It takes a little bit away of that moisture, which makes sense. I mean, don't they do that while drawing, like calligraphy? You kind of put a piece of cloth to take away the excess moisture. Yeah. So here, as you can see, I'm having a little bit of trouble. Now, one thing about these brushes is that something I was really afraid of at first is that those brushes would leak. As in, I didn't know exactly how they worked. So I bought some cheap water brushes before, like from AliExpress, back in the day, a long time ago. And they would constantly drip. They don't have that little bit straight under the nib that kind of regulates the water. And so they would constantly give away water. I hate that. So I was kind of afraid that these would do the exact same thing, but they don't. They have this kind of a vacuum, and the fountain pens have the exact same system in them. So what you do is you have to put the pen inside your mixture or your ink or whatever. You see me do that in the beginning of the video. I forgot to mention that. And then you kind of twist the little end of the paintbrush just to suck in the ink. And if you want to release the ink, you have to twist in the opposite direction, kind of push the ink into the nib. It won't go on its own. So if you are used to squeezing your paintbrush, I hate squeezing my water brushes. Some of them, like the Molotov one that I have, it really requires some strength to squeeze it. I like that brush, but it's a bit of a workout. And especially that it really requires you to squeeze constantly if you want a lot of water. In this case, because the brush is so big, you just have to like twist once. The ink will flow into the brush and you can just keep drawing. It's really, really handy. I thought at first when I realized that this brush worked this way, I thought it would get in my way. But no, it actually worked really well for my style. I was really happy with it. And when the brush dries a little bit, it creates this really nice texture, which, yeah, I'm really, really happy with them, as you probably hear. And just in case you're wondering, no, I haven't been paid for any of this. This is just literally my own opinion. I feel the need to mention that because there have been a lot of reviews lately on my channel. So now, so kind of like the way I'm working right now is that I will, while I'm waiting for the trees to dry, I will go into a scrap piece of paper because I thought at this point that I would like to add a little bit more foliage around the Totoro, just to kind of like, so he has a place to sleep in, like as if he had a little bed of, plants. And I wanted to have a lot of choice, so I've painted some on the scrap piece of the same vellum. And you can see on the side there, I'm cutting them out as I go, and I'm doing it off camera because it's just too much work to cut it off. And then I've realized that while this background is really beautiful, however, it doesn't exactly do what I wanted to do. I was really excited about all the little plants I've painted on the scrap pieces of paper. However, this background didn't provide enough contrast for them. So I had to make a decision, and I've decided to add just a plain black background to the whole, and then kind of work with the elements in the front to add interest. So I've decided to basically scrap completely all the work I've put into that layered forest. That doesn't mean I throw it away. It's actually laying in my cabinet right now, and I'm going to just use it as is because I really like that effect. It just didn't fit within this picture just because the Totoro is a very distinctive style, and the wood itself, the hole in the tree, is a very distinctive style, and then there was the delicate trees that just didn't fit, in my opinion. So I just, you have to adjust if you're not happy with something, and don't be afraid to adjust. So here, this is probably the most time-consuming and the most fun work during these kind of paintings, because this is where it all comes together. And I have plenty of different little plants that I've painted with the brushes. They are different intensity. Some of them are lighter, some of them are darker. I tried repeating the plant at least 3 times so that I could create a little, there's that triangle composition thing. So I'm trying to put everything in sort of a triangle way so that, it's all balanced. But it takes time and it takes a little bit of shifting. However, if you do these kind of paintings, you will know that already. But if you don't, a good tip is not to overthinking, because with these kind of, compositions, it's really all about just sticking to it, just adding pieces one by one, but don't overthinking. Don't think, oh, maybe if I put it on the left, it's going to be a little bit better, maybe on the right. And no, just stick it, because otherwise you're going to spend hours on it. And it's not necessary. It really isn't. And take it, seriously, it comes from experience, because I started doing these kind of pieces. I started having a love for them. And back in the day when I was still doing scrapbooking, I would spend more, for me, scrapbooking was really just more about journaling rather than it's just prettifying the pictures. And I would spend ages just making every single page beautiful, because I would be overthinking every single little step. And no, you just have to trust yourself on that. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. If you feel that maybe something doesn't really, fit somewhere, try to add other pieces around it. Like, see on the side here, I felt that there was a need for something longer. But then when I've added it, I just felt, it's actually, I don't like it that much. But I left it there because all in all, it's nice. I actually really, really like this piece. It came out really, really nicely as a whole. Maybe a particular piece doesn't look exactly well in a certain place, but as a whole, I'm very, very happy. And if you're very, gentle, you can always take something out if it really bothers you. Like you saw me just taking out a piece because I wanted to glue something else in that spot. And what I'm using here is a double-sided tape because I like the pieces to kind of float. They are not glued all the way down. I like that you can, some of them pop a little bit up. They are somehow, I would say, they create this thickness, they're not all flat. And, but they're still, because the tape I'm using is very, very thick, and they all kinds of keep each other in place as well, so it doesn't really go flying anywhere, or it doesn't get unglued. So yeah, it's just pretty much me in the background here, just trying to figure out where everything fits. One other tip I can give you on that is to try, and if you put something on the left, try to put it on the right, and try to put it either up or down in that triangle formation, just to repeat it. I lost the word for a second there. Repetition is seriously your best friend. Even if something is ugly or you hate a shape, it often happens with patterns. When I start doing a pattern, I start hating it at first, but I know if I stick to it, because of this weird repetition law, even if something is ugly, if you repeat it over and over again, it just all of a sudden starts to be, well, not maybe pretty, but it starts to make sense. And the same thing here. Some of those leaves I wasn't particularly crazy about, but they looked so good with everything else, and just because there are so many of them, it just fits, you know? So I'm just playing around, adding them together. And while we're doing that, and we're almost at the end of the video, I would like to remind you guys that I've opened Patreon recently. And I'm just adding lots of fun stuff there. If you like to see like behind the scenes videos or my studio videos, you know, you couldn't go there. And also I think I'm getting really good at kind of maintaining the rewards. If you decide to pledge $1 a month, you're getting access to the weekly podcast, which I'm having fun doing, actually. I feel like over the years I've started enjoying listening to my own voice. Yeah. But here's the finished piece. As you can see, it's so cozy. I love it so much. And I'm happy I got to work with ink again. Now, if you're interested in any of these products, there are links in the description where you can find them. I'm not getting any commission off of it or anything. It's just more, you know, Banggood.com is checking if I'm worth their time. But definitely helps me, and they're very inexpensive. So I'm off definitely those brushes. If you like water brushes, I can tell you they were definitely fun. I will be using them more often. Now, this is the end of the video. Thank you so very much for watching. And leave me a like if you've enjoyed it, and a comment if, you know, should I make more of these actually? I'm kind of in the mood for making more layered pieces. And I feel like I'm rambling a lot. Okay. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye!